Welcome to Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy, the NFL Week 6 preview edition of the show. Ian Cameron and Philip Nelson back with us to break down the NFL once again here for Week 6. Week 5 was a very entertaining week. It was the best week of the season for me betting-wise. Now, best bets, unfortunately, 0-2 last week on the show, but that's the frustrating part. Like, it felt like it was a great week. We had a lot of great results last week on the card, and it was my best week personally from a betting standpoint of the season. And that's why it's always important on this show. Really take heed and listen to the advice and analysis of every game, because I find long term you will have more good calls than bad when it comes to this show and specifically the NFL card on a weekly basis. But Philip, I know you're traveling. Where are you coming from today?
Baltimore. I'm not sure if you can really see this here, but right behind me over here, I've got the home that you can't really see it through the window, but I got M&T Bank Stadium over there. I got M&T Bank, and I have the Orioles Park. So I'm in Baltimore. I had to check on my fantasy quarterback, make sure all is good over here with Lamar. So
yeah, everything's good with Lamar. Everything's not so good with that defense right now.
No, not at all.
Lamar's fine. I mean, there's other issues right now with the Ravens team. My goodness, last week, although they win, a win's a win, but my goodness, you talk about getting away with one. They could not really stop Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals last week, but a win's a win, and they were able to survive and do enough offensively there in that one. And that was a game where I was on the over, and couldn't have been easier to be able to cash that one. This is an interesting card this week. We have another London, England game this week. So let's get right into it. We'll begin with Thursday night football and a very interesting game in the NFC West. Desperation already with two teams that need some wins here. The San Francisco 49ers taking on the Seattle Seahawks. We've got the 49ers, 3.5-point road favorites in this game, and the total sitting at around 49 pretty much across the board. Who saw San Francisco being under 500, 2-3 at this stage of the season? Yet here we are. Yes, there have been some injuries. We've talked about how San Francisco has had a lot of key personnel missing in the early part of the season, but they've started to get a little bit healthier the last few weeks. So you can't use that as a complete and utter excuse. I think if you're San Francisco, your issues are red zone offense, and it came to the forefront last week in their loss to the Arizona Cardinals. They moved the football all day against Arizona, but too many times Brock Purdy and the 49ers offense settled in the red zone for field goals. They've had some inconsistent play. I think it's been disappointing that what we've seen from Brandon Ayuk, although finally he had a better game against Arizona. But Deebo Samuel didn't have a great game the other night. The team just bogged down offensively in the red zone. And then the bigger issue has been the defense for San Francisco. They have been ripped apart. They've been giving up big points. We saw Minnesota, that team struggle on the offense, the defensive side of the football. Where's the pass rush? Where's the ability to stop the run? How the hell can you allow, there's just so many issues right now with San Francisco defensively. You look at last week, there's James Conner ripping them up for 86 yards on the ground. Kyler Murray from the quarterback position adds 83 yards on the ground. That's not run defense that we're used to from the San Francisco 49ers. The pass rush, it was very limited in that game as well. Nothing from Nick Bosa. The only sack was Leonard Floyd against Arizona. So it's a defense that's got some holes in it right now. And this is really a carryover from last year in the playoffs, where we saw in the Green Bay game, they struggled, although they won that playoff game. The Detroit game, it was really their offense that pulled them through. And then in Kansas City, game on the line in the Super Bowl, couldn't get a stop when they needed it. So this is a Niners defense that's shown now for really several weeks that they've got some issues. This is not a defense that it's cracked up to be. 23 allowed to Minnesota, 27 to the Rams in that stunning loss where they collapsed in the fourth quarter. 24 in the loss to Arizona last week. The really good defensive game they had this year, the one was the New England Patriots, 30-13, and that's not saying a whole lot considering the state of the Patriots offense right now. So the bottom line is, after all that, am I ready to lay 3.5 on the road with San Francisco? Absolutely not. going into this game in a big division game. One thing I will say, though, in San Francisco's favor, I guess you could say, in this game is they've utterly owned Seattle. They've won 5 straight. They've covered 4 of those 5 games. And even the game that they didn't, they still won by 12. This has been a one-sided series, which makes me hesitant to back Seattle here. But what also makes me hesitant to back Seattle, their own defense. And we talked about this. We saw this coming a couple weeks ago. And I know Philip agreed with me on this point. 3-0 to start the year. Defensive numbers, whether it was yards per play allowed, rush yards, pass yards allowed, all those key defensive stats, they look great after the first 3 games. But then you look at the schedule, and of course they're going to look great. It was Bo Nix on the road in his first NFL start. It was Jacoby Brissett for New England. It was the combination of Tim Boyle and Skylar Thompson at quarterback for Miami for an injured Tua. That was the quarterbacks and the offenses they played in those first 3 games. So then they played some halfway decent, a great offense in Detroit. They don't get a single stop that whole game. They give up 42. They give up 29 to Daniel Jones and the Giants in a 29-20 loss last week. And look, they were moving the ball up and down the whole game. Daniel Jones was making plays in the passing game. Even the run game last week, which we thought would be a concern for the Giants, considering they had no Devin Singletary last week, and there's Tyrone Tracy coming in and stepping up with 129 yards on the ground against the Seattle defense. So not good at all from that side of the ball. That being said, in a game where both teams have defensive issues, I always take the points, or I lean to taking the points. Will I? I'm not sure. Maybe a small bet here on Seattle. I am concerned about their track record of just getting mauled by the Niners. I'm concerned about the fact their defense might be even worse right now than the Niners' own defense is. But I still lean here on a short week. It's not easy to go on the road and travel on a short week. We know that with a Niners team that's struggling. I lean Seattle. It's a lukewarm lean, small bet only. But I do think I'll get involved for a couple of shekels here tonight on Thursday night with Seattle plus 3.5. And I do lean over this total as well. I think that's what I prefer even more is this over. Now, Thursday night games, sometimes that's where overs go to die. We've talked about this. There's usually more unders than overs on Thursday night, but it's hard for me to bet an under with these 2 defenses right now, and especially Seattle. And the thing with Seattle's defense, Phil, is they're getting even more injury riddled. They're continuing to lose key bodies, defensive line, linebacking core, secondaries beat up a little bit. That's concerning, obviously, moving forward. What do you think here, Philip, for Thursday night, San Francisco, Seattle?
Yeah, you know what? It's a crucial game for both teams, really. Both coming off of losses here. The NFC West seems to be open at this point. We don't really know what we're seeing with Seattle or for the 49ers defense at this point. But I agree with what you're saying here. I think, you take the points with Seattle. Like you said, short week. They're at home. So I agree with you on this one. I think you take the points with Seattle, and I think with the total, I think I'd go under here as well. I'm not really sure. I think these defenses, I don't know. I'm relying on the fact that it's a shorter week, and I think that it's a bounce back game for both these defenses. So that's kind of where I'm at with this one.
All right, leaning under. I like it. I like the head-to-head that sometimes we have.
Yeah.
I get it. Short week, Thursday night games have been under Palooza for years in the NFL. I could see it, and that could be where the focus is, obviously, in the limited practice week that both of these teams have, knowing that they both got ripped apart last week defensively. San Fran by Arizona, Seattle by the New York Giants. So I get that part of the logic behind maybe leaning under here tonight. It's a fascinating game, though, for sure, coming up here tonight, and a big one, very important game early in the season here for both of these teams. All right, let's move to Sunday, and once again, we have another of the London Games series over in London, England, Jacksonville and Chicago. We've got the Chicago Bears 2-point home favorites, or 2-point favorites on the neutral field here in London, 44.5 the total in this game. Jacksonville off the mat, and they get their first win of the season last week against Indianapolis. And as someone that took Jacksonville in that game, God, they still made it a fucking sweat and a half right to the end. They're up by 14 in the last 5 minutes, and they give up back-to-back big play touchdowns to Joe Flacco and the Indianapolis Colts, who end up tying that game, and then they need to walk it off with a field goal at the end when they probably should have put that game away earlier than that. But they did get a win, a much-needed one. You can tell that was a fragile team, because they had the big lead. They blew it, but they found a way to win against Indianapolis last week. The offensive line has been a problem right now for this Jacksonville offense, but they finally had some good protection for him against Indy. I don't know if that's the offensive line, Phil, being better, Jacksonville or Indy, just having zero pass rush and a shit ton of injuries. We'll get to that with Indy. They are beyond ravaged on defense right now with injuries, and I think we saw that last week play out to fruition with Jacksonville. They couldn't get a stop the Colts for most of that game, but Jacksonville took advantage. You give them credit, but now that offensive line is going to be tested here against Chicago. Chicago's got a very solid defense. So let's see if that Jacksonville offense and Trevor Lawrence, which by far had their best game of the season last week in the win against Indy, it's going to be a little bit of a tougher challenge for them. But there is an idea of this team getting that first win, getting to 1-4, having a little bounce in their step, going to London, England. And one thing you can't overlook in handicapping this game, this is familiarity for Jacksonville. They play in London basically every year. In fact, they played 2 games in a row last year in London. They played in London the year before that. They played in London before that. This is a team that's used to making the trip here and playing games overseas across the pond. I mean, Jacksonville went 2-0 straight up and against the spread last year in their back-to-back games in London. And one of those wins was against the Buffalo Bills, a very good team. So be careful with this game, because you could look at it and say this line looks pretty cheap on Chicago, who are entering in with the better record, 3-2, certainly the better defense, back-to-back wins for them against the Rams and the Panthers. But you can't underestimate, I should say, the fact that Jacksonville has a ton of familiarity and a level of comfortability, I would say, playing here in London. I actually lean to the Jags. If this hits 3, I'll definitely be involved with Jacksonville in this game. I know Chicago has shown some life offensively the last 2 weeks. The Rams game, they got their offense going last week against Carolina. It's just hilarious how prior to last week and for most of the season, Phil, what have we heard about the Bears? What's wrong with their offensive line? What's wrong with Caleb Williams and his lack of consistency? What no run game? Why? Why can't DeAndre Swift and the run game get going? And then all of a sudden you play the Carolina Panthers last week, and it's like, oh, the run game gets going. Oh, the offensive line finally looks great. Oh, Caleb Williams has his best game of the season all of a sudden. So was that a product of Chicago figuring it out offensively, or was that a product of, you're playing one of the worst defenses in all the NFL right now in the Carolina Panthers, as to why Chicago looked good? And I know we were both on the Bears last week, Phil, so I'm sure we enjoyed that result there against the Panthers, about an easy win as you could get for Chicago. But I do lean Jacksonville here. They got the win. That's going to be confidence. They're definitely comfortable in their surroundings here, maybe compared to Chicago. They know the routine through the week. I mean, don't underestimate that shit. Jacksonville, they know what the week leading up to this game is like. For Chicago, a lot of their players are experiencing this for the first time. So Jacksonville for me at +2. I agree with the total move up. It's just very difficult right now to bet Jacksonville under. And to me, the total at 42 was too low. I jumped in right away. I said, this total's got to go up. 42 is too low. 44.5 now. I still lean that way, though, over the total. What do you think here, Phil? Jacksonville, Chicago.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think the big battle here is going to be the Jaguars offense versus the Chicago Bears defense. I think the defense, obviously the Bears defense has been fantastic so far this year. The Jaguars, I feel like this is kind of like a home game for them. They're used to this. They know what it's like over there and everything. I completely agree with you. I think, the Jaguars could potentially sneak this one out. I think, +2, I would definitely take the Jaguars +2 here. And I think this might be a high scoring game as well. I think there's a little bit of momentum for the Jaguars. Trevor Lawrence is kind of figuring some shit out. Caleb Williams is getting better each week as well. So, I agree with you. Jaguars +2 and an over here.
Yeah, like I said, and let's be honest, even though Jacksonville, that O-line and that offense is underachieved, there's more talent on this offense than that should be better. And for Chicago's defense, I will say this too. They faced some weaker offenses in some of their games this season, so We'll see how they fare here against Jacksonville. And like I said, there is definitely that factor of Jacksonville being very comfortable playing in London. They're used to this. They're probably staying in the same hotel in the same place they always do. And that's probably a big time plus for them going into this game. Doesn't guarantee they're going to win, obviously.
Right.
But it's definitely something that in their back pocket. They're probably a team that feels a little more comfortable making this trip than maybe Chicago is. All right, next up, we've got Washington and Baltimore. The Ravens, 6.5-point home favorites, 51.5 the total. Who would have thought early in the season that Washington and Baltimore would be one of the big games of the week in the NFL? But here we are. It has been an unbelievable start for the Commanders, the commies, as I like to say. And it has been and Jaden Daniels has been at the forefront of it. He is he's the star attraction as to why Washington's 4-1 to start the year. A beat down of the Cleveland Browns. That's 2 weeks in a row. Washington has absolutely annihilated an opponent. Arizona 42-14, Cleveland 34-13. Another phenomenal game from Jaden Daniels, 238 through the air. You know what I loved about that win against Cleveland? He had that rough interception in the red zone early in the game against Cleveland last week. Didn't shake him at all. Did not deter him one fucking bit. He just bounced right back. He led the team down the field once again for a touchdown drive, threw that big bomb down the field to De'Ami Brown. And that's another thing, too. We're starting to see some of the skill position group step up. Lots been on the plate of Terry McLaurin, but now all of a sudden Zach Ertz is getting involved. And De'Ami Brown has a big touchdown catch. And now Austin Eckler's being a threat to run and catch the ball out of the backfield for Washington. The offensive line's gotten better and better throughout the season. The one issue I had all season with Washington was their defense, and even they are making strides on that side of the football. You know, shutting down Arizona, shutting down Cleveland, and making Deshaun Watson look very poor. Let me just put it that way in that win last week. They got pressure throughout the course of that game as well, which was good to see. 2.5 sacks for Frankie Louvu. Bobby Wagner with 1.5 sacks. Dante Fowler, Dorrance Armstrong, and Jonathan Allen each have one as well. This defense has made incredible improvement from very early in the season when they got absolutely shredded by Tampa Bay in the one loss that they had this year, Washington. The question now is, you're now swimming in the deep end of the pool here. You're taking on the Baltimore Ravens. People think of them as one of the AFC contenders, and certainly they are. But I'll say this, Phil, and I think you agree, they definitely have an AFC contender, Super Bowl contender offense right now with Lamar Jackson. Derrick Henry has been just an incredible fit for this offense, which is definitely now run heavy. Even Todd Monken has finally figured out we're going to be run heavy, and they're sticking to that after he screwed that up in the AFC Championship game, tried to turn them into a pass-heavy offense, totally absurd game plan against Kansas City, which cost them. He's finally figured out we're going to be a run-heavy team, and it's working. I mean, you look at Henry in the backfield and you look at Lamar's RPO threat, and all of a sudden it is a very dangerous offense. Then you throw in the ability to, the run. Everyone's got to play run, and it will eventually open up lanes to throw the football down the field to Bateman, to Flowers, to others on this receiving core for Baltimore. So there's no doubt they have a Super Bowl contender offense. I'm not sure right now they have a Super Bowl contender defense, though. There are some real problems for Baltimore on that side of the football. Pass rush hasn't been great. You look at the fact that the secondary has been absolutely shredded in some of these games, especially the Dallas game. And I know they had a big lead. Some of that was playing, a little more conservative, passive defense, prevent defense. You know what I say? Prevent defense prevents you from winning. That's what I always say. But Dallas, they gave up big yards through the air. Gardner Minshew's carving them up to come back and beat Baltimore earlier this year. Joe Burrow and the Bengals moved the ball up and down. Don't forget, the Bengals led by 10. They were up 38-20. Baltimore couldn't get many stops. Cincinnati was moving the ball, and then they fumbled late in the fourth quarter. You look at this as a situation where this has not been a very good defense. I mean, Burrow, 392 through the air. The run defense has been okay, but certainly, but the secondary's really had trouble. And the way Jaden Daniels has shown the ability to make plays downfield in the passing game, we know the run component's a big part of it. I'm not ready to lay 6.5 with Baltimore. Now, here's what I would say. If you haven't been riding Washington and you haven't been betting on Washington, is this the right week to jump in as they take a step up in class? Maybe, maybe not. But in my shoes, Phil, I've been betting Washington these last few weeks. I took them against Cincinnati Monday Night Football 3 weeks ago. I took them against Arizona a couple weeks ago. I was on them last week against Cleveland. We talked about this. I mean, the price looked cheap against Cleveland the way Washington's playing, and they took care of business easily. So I've cashed 3 in a row with the Commanders. Because of that, I'm not jumping off the train. They've clearly been mispriced. They've clearly been undervalued and underrated by everybody coming into the season because everyone's surprised at just how good already Jayden Daniels is. I'm going to continue to think until proven otherwise, Washington remains undervalued here. And I think they are ready to handle this step up and at least compete, which is all they need to do in this game, obviously, as a plus 6.5 point underdog. Just compete, be in the game, make it a close one down the stretch, and you're going to get the money. So for me, I'm back on Washington, on the Washington Commanders Express here, plus 6.5. Overpass for me in this game. I get it. It's a high total, 51.5. But you aren't going to see me betting this Washington offense under, and you're not going to see me betting Baltimore's defense right now under the total. Phil, what do you think here? One of the big games, week 6, Washington, Baltimore. Right where you are right now, the game's going to be.
Right. Well, hey, I completely agree with you on this one. I think, both offenses are clearly hot. Baltimore's defense is not what we thought that they were going to be. And I just could see this game being something along the lines of the Ravens jump out or something like that. But the Commanders come back and keep it close, plus 6.5. And the Ravens have a tough time closing out teams, I feel like. The other side to that, though, is if they can get a lead and then dominate the run game and bleed out the clock, that's what makes me a little bit nervous here. But I do think that the Commanders' offense is hot right now, plus 6.5. I think that that's kind of a steal, honestly. I think they're going to keep this one close. I'm taking Commanders plus 6.5. I think the Ravens are going to win, and definitely an over here for sure for me.
This should be a good one. This is the game, certainly the early games I'm looking forward to the most. There's no question. It should be interesting to see how it goes. Now, the Ravens have been better against the run, so I'm interested to see that if Jayden Daniels is forced to throw the ball more, especially on the road, can he get the job done? Because a big part of the success of Washington is they've been able to run the football pretty well most of the year. Brian Robinson, Austin Eckler, they've been good in the run game. If Baltimore takes that away, can this be the Jayden Daniels show solely through the air with his arm? I don't know. He's looked pretty good. I wouldn't.
And some of these guys out here are saying, "Geez, Commanders win this game and Jayden Daniels plays well." Is he playing himself into the MVP conversation? You know what I mean? I don't know, man. He's
already rookie of the year, slam dunk heavy favorite.
You know what I mean? He's really he's crushing it, and I think that I think he's going to be able to throw and good point on the running game too. But I do think that Baltimore has a tough time closing out teams, and I think that Washington's going to keep this close. So I could see plus 6.5 for sure.
That's right, and like I said, I think because the one thing is the Baltimore defense has struggled, but definitely way more struggles in that secondary against the pass as opposed to against the run. So it's going to be interesting to see if Jayden can have that magic. And you're right about the MVP. The MVP odds have crashed on Jayden Daniels. He's right up there now. And, of course, he's barring a catastrophe, he's going to win Rookie of the Year, too, in the NFL. There's no question about that. At least certainly he's the slam dunk winner of that award through the first month. All right, Arizona and Green Bay. We've got the Packers 5-point home favorites at Lambeau, 47.5 the total. Here in this game. Arizona, what a performance last week. And I kind of thought that they could hang around. I ended up on Arizona plus 7.5 last week, but I think they would win the game outright. Not so much, but what a job by them. Now, they did take advantage, too, of some kicker issues with Jake Moody. San Francisco basically couldn't kick field goals down the stretch, but at the same time, their offense was on a roll. Kyler Murray was outstanding. The offense just moved the football throughout that game against San Francisco. We'll see if they can have some success here. Now, here's the thing with Arizona. They're now 2-3. That's their second win of the year. Do they have the maturity here to, after a big win like that, you got to go on the road for an early start game to the Midwest, second straight road game, and play well? Or do you have that little bit of a hangover after such a huge divisional win as you take on Green Bay? Make sure before you bet anything with the total, especially the over, you check the weather. Because it looks like it could be a little bit nasty, and Green Bay, Wisconsin for this game on Sunday. They're calling for rain, maybe
Wind.
heavy wind as well.
Yeah.
So that's also why this total, I think, has been bet down. It opened 49.5. It's all the way down to 47.5 right now because of some wind conditions and wind issues. These are two capable ground attacks, though, obviously. When you talk about Arizona, they've had a good season from James Conner. When you talk about Green Bay, Josh Jacobs, certainly capable with a little dose of Emmanuel Wilson as well to run the football for this Green Bay team. So that was a great win for Arizona last week. Meanwhile, the Packers, look, I know the Rams are, banged up. They've had their issues. But I give Jordan Love credit for this. That pick six was as bad as it gets. Okay, you won't see a worse decision. You won't see a worse throw. Combination throw and decision. What the hell were you fucking thinking, man? Just in the end, I know you wanted to avoid the safety, but for crying out loud, take the fucking safety
right
in that spot. You just can't just chuck the ball to not see where you're going, and just an easy pick six for the Rams. But to his credit, from that point on, he was terrific, and he bounced back. He got punched in the mouth with that horrible play, and he bounced back and he played great the rest of the way. And so did the Green Bay offense for most of that game. Like I said, Jacobs and Wilson running the ball. I think Tucker Kraft has clearly become the starting tight end for this team. Musgrave, you can't count on him. He's never healthy. And Tucker Kraft's been more than good. The tough physical after the catch running that we've seen from him as well, including on that great touchdown reception he had. Jaden Reed had a nice game as well. We're still waiting on Dontavian Wicks to get going because he's had the dropsies here early in the season for Green Bay. You get him going, and all of a sudden, this is a very good receiving core that Jordan Love has to work with Green Bay. That offensive line played well. Defense is still a work in progress, but I'm telling you what, when Jair Alexander gets healthy in the secondary and that D-line is starting to get better and better, they're getting better against the run. They're getting better with their pass rush as well. Green Bay's got the makings of, and I figured early in the season the defense would struggle. They have, but that defense is getting better. And by, late October into November, December, we could be talking about a pretty damn good Green Bay defense if they keep this trajectory going. So I think it's a tough spot for Arizona. I just do. Just handicapping 101 is I don't know if this Arizona team's built and wired to have a win like they had last week, come from behind, division rival, San Francisco, huge win in the division, to now go on the road for a second straight week, ramp it up all over again, and take on Green Bay and elements weather-wise that could be pretty nasty here for this game. So I'm leaning Packers here at -5 in this one. I think they probably have the chance to get it done here at home. What do you think here, Phil? Arizona, Green Bay.
I agree. I think Packers -5 here. Like you said before, monitor the weather. Both these teams want to run the ball anyway. If you have some nasty weather, I think 47.5 is high here. But I think the Packers have a tough time closing out teams too. Clearly, I mean, I feel like last week they let the Rams back in the game and everything like that. So, I think this is going to be a rush heavy game. Obviously, the return of Trey McBride was huge for the Cardinals last week. We saw that. But yeah, I think monitor the weather here. This is a little bit of a scary one, but I'm pretty confident in an under here. I think the Packers defense is playing well, like you said, and I think these teams want to run the ball. And given the weather as well, I think an under here and Packers -5.
Yeah, it should be like I said, it's a difficult, tricky spot in my opinion for the Arizona Cardinals. They're like, this is usually the point spread range I like to take Arizona.
Right.
But in this spot, I'm a little bit concerned, after the win last week, now going into the Midwest here to take on Green Bay, early start as well. And like I said, -7, I wouldn't be interested. -5 with Green Bay, I think there's a chance they could win by upwards of a touchdown here. All right, Houston and New England. The Drake May era begins for New England. Houston 7-point road favorites, 38 the total. This is to me coaching sacrilege here by Gerard Mayo. Why the hell are you, the timing of it's not that you're choosing to start Drake May, because I think we've seen enough of Jacoby Brissett to know I think it's just about time maybe to see Drake May. It's the timing of it. That's what I've got an issue with. Why on earth did we not see him last week? at home against Miami, a beaten down Miami team, a struggling Miami team, down to what, their third or fourth quarterback on the depth chart. Why was that not the game to bring Drake May in as to make his Patriots debut? Why are
Right.
you choosing a much better, much tougher, a much stronger Houston Texans team? I don't get it. I just don't understand. That should have been last week, as far as I'm concerned. But they've made the move to Drake May. It's not the easiest matchup. Houston's got a pretty solid defense, and they showed it in the second. At the end of that game against Buffalo, there were opportunities for Buffalo, who came back in the second half to take that game. But that Houston defense rose up, got some key stops, and it's not an easy assignment for Drake May in his first ever NFL start. Now, what he does offer that Jacoby Brissett doesn't is a little more mobility, and certainly I think a little bit, definitely a stronger arm. But is that going to show up in the very first game of the year against a very good Houston Texans team? That remains to be seen. Houston, though, you look at them, and I know they got the win against Buffalo on the walk-off Kaimi Fairbairn field goal. He drilled it from over 50 yards. Great kick, and he's had a great season. But they have not played four great quarters of football in any of their games this year.
No.
They've been an inconsistent. They have not played a complete game yet. And now I know their record is still 3-1 on the, or 4-1 on the season, so there's nothing to really panic about. But the Colts game, they escaped 29-27. They had a terrible second half against Chicago, the Sunday night game, and hung on 19-13. Offense didn't work. 34-17 loss to Minnesota. 24-20 win against Jacksonville, where they were down. They could have lost that game to the winless Jags, and they needed a C.J. Stroud touchdown drive at the end to win. Great first half against Buffalo last week, but not a good second half. Buffalo comes all the way back, almost takes the game from them. Houston has to hang on and get the game-winning field goal at the end. So they haven't played four great quarters. I don't care how good you are on paper. If you're not playing four great quarters, I'm not laying 7 with you on the road. And that's how I kind of feel here about Houston in this game. I want nothing to do with the side. I don't like the New England side either. And the thing, too, about New England is their defense, which is supposed to carry them, they've had some cracks in the armor. This New England defense hasn't been as good as I thought, and they need it to be because the offense is so compromised and the offense is so challenged with this O-line, which is horrible, with the lack of weapons and the lack of speed at receiver. This defense has to carry them, and they haven't done a good enough job of that. There's been some holes. There's been some games where New England's given up big plays and points on that side of the football. So this is a pass for me from a side perspective. Clear pass, about the easiest pass, I think, on the board. I can't lay 7 with Houston, but I'm not interested in New England either against this team with the rookie quarterback making his first start, Drake May. I'd lean under again until proven otherwise with a New England game. And let's be honest, it's not like the Texans offense has been lighting it up for 4 quarters in every game, and they just lost Nico Collins to injury, which is a huge deal. It puts more pressure on Diggs, Dell, the other receivers. And Nico Collins, by far, has been C.J. Stroud's number 1 target, his favorite receiver, his big play threat. And now without him, it certainly weakens the Texans offense moving forward. What do you think here, Phil? Houston, New England.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's a few factors on this one that really stuck out to me. This Patriots offensive line is horseshit. The Texans D-line is fierce. You know what I mean? They rush, they get after the passer. You know, I watched Drake May pretty closely in the preseason. There's a learning curve with him. He's going to come out there and he's going to see, you know, some starting defense, some live bullets that he's never seen before. The only thing I feel pretty confident about here is the under, like you said. I don't love the -7 or +7 either. You know, I'm not confident in any of that. I think the Texans pull out the game, but I think an under here, and I don't think the Patriots really move the ball that much. And I really don't think the Texans will either. I think, you know, like you said, the Patriots defense is kind of supposed to be carrying this team. But yeah, cracks in the armor, great way to put it. Nico Collins is out. I think, you know, I think an under here is pretty, you know, a good bet. And I think the Texans pull it out, but I don't know about -7.
Yeah, like I said, it's going to be interesting to see Houston adjusting to life without, like I said, Nico Collins with that hamstring injury that he's dealing with. Because, like I said, you saw it after he left that game last week. That offense just stopped working, really. I mean, they
Yeah.
didn't really do much in that Buffalo game after he got injured. So we'll have to wait and see how the adjustment in this Texans offense. That's another reason why I'm hesitant to lay the 7 with them in that game. All right, Tampa Bay and New Orleans. We got the Bucks 3.5-point road favorites. 41 the total in this game. Derek Carr out, put on the injured list, suffered the injury at the end of that Kansas City game on Monday night and didn't return. And that means we thought maybe they were going to go. I thought they were actually going to go to Jake Haener at quarterback, the kid out of Fresno, who I think showed actually he was actually pretty solid in the preseason. I'm a little surprised Dennis Allen is going to Spencer Rattler at quarterback for this game. Of course, former Oklahoma Sooner, former South Carolina Gamecock, of course, in college. And now here he is starting for New Orleans, his first ever NFL start. I'm a little surprised, I'll be honest. I thought for sure it was going to be Haener. Yeah, I'm not betting on New Orleans with Spencer Rattler in his first start. I'm not doing that. And you factor in the Tampa, a little pissed off coming out of the loss they had in overtime against Atlanta on the Thursday night last week. I think they feel they probably should have won that game and closed it out. You talk about that was not Vince Lombardi versus Bill Belichick on that fucking sideline last Thursday. No. Tampa Bay, Atlanta. Raheem Morris and for Atlanta, and of course Todd Bowles for Tampa. That was a battle of who's going to fuck up more. Who's going to be a more idiot coach here? Here you've got friggin' Raheem Morris, and he doesn't know his delay a game penalty when you're trying to line up a game-tying field goal to force overtime, which is inexcusable, unconscionable that could happen. And then you got Todd Bowles on the drive before that. You just got the interception of Kirk Cousins, manage the clock, end the game. They take a holding penalty. The play calling was ridiculous. Screen passes when you're trying to run the clock out, and you give Atlanta all that time. Clock mismanagement 101 from Todd Bowles. I mean, that was not, like I said, that's not Bill Landry versus Don Shula from a coaching standpoint last week with that Raheem Morris and Todd Bowles battle. My gosh, coaching malpractice really on both sides. And they're not two of my favorite coaches. I always said this about Bowles. I haven't liked Bowles much going back to the Jets. He was a disaster there. He can thank Tom Brady for his one Super Bowl with Tampa Bay. But coaching has always left a lot to be desired for me with him. And then Raheem Morris, that's another story. Like I say, I wasn't enamored the first time he was a head coach, and I'm still not. But I do think Tampa's in a good bounce-back spot. Here's the thing that I'm hesitant on, because for me it's Tampa or pass. They've been an underdog, and they've been a pretty good underdog. You know, they've been cashing tickets. A lot of them have been in the underdog role. Is this team ready to be favored and ready to be favored by more than a field goal on the road, even with a first-time quarterback and Spencer Rattler starting? Because we've only seen Tampa favored once this year. 6-point home favorites to Denver. They lost 26-7. Okay, you give me Tampa as +6 underdog or big points as a dog, I'm interested. Pick them even, I'm interested. But now we're asking them to win by margin on the road. That's a little bit of a different price range here for Tampa Bay. That being said, they're off a loss. They should be ramped up. Baker Mayfield said all the right things after the loss. We have to finish. We have to execute for 4 quarters. For me, I still like to lean Tampa Bay. I'll probably bet them small. But, again, they are favored now. And being asked to win and lay more than a field goal on the road, that's a new price range for them. And they haven't always been great in this particular point spread role. Being said, you can't get me to bet New Orleans on a short week with Rattler. No way. And that defense, too, has got a lot of injuries. The linebacker core was decimated against Kansas City. They took advantage of it. People running free in the secondary for Kansas City that whole game. That defense is a disaster right now. Maybe a Tampa team total over if you don't feel comfortable laying the points. Maybe the team total over might be the better look here with the Bucs in this game, especially if that New Orleans defense is going to be as decimated injury-wise this week as it was on Monday night. What do you think here, Phil? Bucs, Saints.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying here as well. Big bounce back game for the Buccaneers. New Orleans Saints, their offensive line is also banged up. Buccaneers are a heavy blitz team. You know,
backup center last week. Great point.
Yeah. Yep. So, I mean, banged up offensive line, rookie quarterback, heavy blitz team. I will say, as a quarterback, when I watched that game, Buccaneers last week, boy, when you blitz and you drop into zones and you don't reroute people, I mean, you saw Pitts running right seams, just nobody even touching him. And I mean, this is the easiest throw. If as a quarterback, if you can identify a blitz and then the defense doesn't reroute anybody, I mean, it's obviously different with Kirk Cousins, but Rattler, who knows at this point? I don't feel comfortable with the Saints. I think it's a big bounce back game for the Buccaneers. Saints defense is decimated. I think the Buccaneers are going to win this one, and I also do. The total is going to be difficult for me as well because I just don't know how many points the Saints are going to put up either. So, I think Buccaneers -3.5 is comfortable. I'm not sure about this total here, but yeah, big bounce back game for the Bucs. Rookie quarterback, injuries. I'm leaning Bucs here.
All right. By the way, that's why we have Philip Nelson on the show with insight like that. He knows how to. He saw it from his couch about how they should have adjusted on defense against Kyle Pitts, and Todd Bowles can't figure that out. So
there's multiple plays where just a seam route, and I'm watching the linebacker just not even touch them, just letting them run right through, and the lane was massive. And if you're blitzing 5, you can pick that up comfortably as an offense. So if you're blitzing 5 and you're not rerouting anybody, you can shred them. But Rattler, who knows? We'll see.
That'll be, like I said, I'm just fascinated at how Rattler plays, and I'm fascinated that. And there's another coach that's not exactly, Chuck Noll, the second in Dennis Allen. There's another one that he leaves a lot to be desired from a coaching standpoint too. So the Todd Bowles versus Dennis Allen. Buckle up, folks, as far as coaching in this game. All right, next up, we've got Cleveland and Philadelphia. Philadelphia 9-point home favorites, 42.5 the total in this game. Lay it. Philly off a bye. They're pissed off after the loss. The no-show against Tampa Bay before the bye week was a disastrous performance. Now, they did have injuries. There's no question about that. Going into that game against Tampa, that played a role, but they also played terrible. This now becomes a very important game for them. When you look at it, they're 2-2. The NFC East is suddenly very competitive, with the Giants getting a big win against Seattle, with Washington surprising everybody. Dallas has now won a couple in a row. So this all of a sudden becomes a very big game in the division for Philly, off a bye week and that terrible loss where they got blown out by Tampa Bay. Cleveland looks like a stick a fork in them. They're done team. I was hearing the post-game audio after that blowout loss to Washington last week. None of it was good. Kevin Stefanski talking nonsense, talking in circles. It's like, just keep on battling, keep working, just the same old coach jargon that I hear for teams that suck. So for me, it's not a matter of working, man. It's personnel. You have a shit quarterback. He's over the hill. He's shot. He's done. Yeah. Deshaun Watson. What happened to his mobility, by the way? When he was in Houston years ago, this is a guy that could escape the pocket, fleet of foot, terrific on the move in the pocket. He's like that old fucking man, old geezer in the quarterback. He reminds me of Eli Manning at the end of his career, a decade ago. He can't move in the pocket. Stiff as a board, statue in the pocket. Can't get out of trouble. Like, what happened to his mobility? Did the massage shit, take away his ability to run around? And what the hell? I guess so. My gosh. He looks like an old man in the pot. Like, he just doesn't run anymore. Like, it's just incredible to see that part of his game, which was so good for Houston, just completely disappear. But what's wrong with his defense? This defense just continues, especially on the road, to have problems. This was an issue last year where on the road they give up big points. This is just not a great defense either. It's time to admit that. Myles Garrett and who else is a big time playmaker, whether it's on the D line, at the linebacking. Well, Owusu Koromoa is actually pretty good. But after those two guys, it's just not a whole lot. Denzel Ward's never healthy in the secondary, and they've been picked on. And you look at these recent road games. This is going back to last year with Cleveland. 22 allowed to Houston, 31 allowed to Cincy, 45 allowed to Houston in that playoff loss for Cleveland last year, 20 to Las Vegas, who don't have a great offense by any stretch, and then 34. They get ripped apart by Washington last week. So this team looks like they are crumbling and just unraveling at the seams. This line was -6 early in the week. It's now not. It's crossed through a key number of 7 all the way up to 9, which speaks of how the betting markets are crashing down hard on this Cleveland Browns team right now. And I can't blame them. They look like a complete and utter mess. You've got Philly off a loss, Philly off a bye. I laid it. I didn't even get 6. I got 7 of Monday morning. Even at 9, I would say lay it. I think Philly can win this one by double digits. This is not a Cleveland team I want any part of right now. Phil, what do you think? Browns, Eagles.
Yeah, I completely agree with you here. I mean, Vic Fangio coming off a bye, has time to prepare against the NFL's worst offense. Deshaun Watson. I mean, they're handcuffed with him. This seems like a management thing. Like, I mean, he's got to, they're getting forced to play him. I think, I think Kevin Stefanski, two-time, coach of the year, there's absolutely no way he wants to be playing him right now. -9, that's tough. I agree with you. I think this could be an explode game for the Eagles. They're getting A.J. Brown back. Devontae Smith's healthy. Lane Johnson's coming back. So this offense, they're getting healthy while the Browns are crumbling. This would be kind of an interesting tease game as well for me. Tease the Eagles down, but I could also see it exactly how the way you see it as well, like just an absolute massacre. So obviously Eagles here, depending upon whether or not you feel comfortable laying the -9 at this point. Good for you getting the -7. I would do that all day. Yeah, I think this is going to be a bloodbath.
All right, Indianapolis, Tennessee. Next up, we've got Tennessee, 2.5-point home favorites, 43 the total. I jumped on this a couple days ago. I actually took the Titans here, and I know Tennessee's had issues, but they did. And now it was Miami with out Tua, but still, you had to get a win. They finally did in that game against the Dolphins, off a bye week as well, following that Monday night game. So it's a good spot for the Titans. And more than anything, this is just a bet against this Indy defense, which, look, even when fully healthy, I don't think they have a great defense, but they are beaten up. This is unbelievable, the injury report, and it's worrisome for the Indianapolis Colts on that side of the football. You look at the injuries that have mounted on defense for this football team. You look at Kwity Paye. You look at, obviously, they've got more injury. They've got Kenny Moore in the secondary. They've got some other banged-up linebackers as well going into this game. The D-line's ravaged. Still without their starting center, potentially, Ryan Kelly. There's a lot of issues right now for the Colts. Although I will say their offense has still moved the football well, even without Ryan Kelly, their starting center. It's the defensive injuries that are far more troubling and worrisome right now. They are a decimated team on that side of the football. So I jumped on Tennessee. I jumped on the over early in the week. Total's been bet up from 41 to 43. And I think that's just people reacting to just these cluster injuries that the Colts have been besieged with on defense right here. And we saw it last week. That's Jacksonville, who had been struggling on offense, just absolutely carving up a carve job of that injury-riddled Indianapolis defense last week. So if Trevor Lawrence and the Jags can do that, maybe even Will Levis and this Tennessee offense at home and off a bye week with extra time can do that. What do you think here, Phil?
I completely agree with you on this one as well. The one question mark that I have is, I'm from what I'm seeing, it's unclear as to who's going to be playing quarterback for both teams at this point, right? I mean, yep. I don't know if Flacco's going to be in there. Richardson's making his comeback. Levis, I could see Callahan using Levis's injury as an excuse to kind of push him aside. I think that's one thing that kind of makes me a little bit weary, leery to want to place a bet on this one. But the total obviously jumping up a little bit here. Injuries, big factor here, but I need to know who's playing quarterback if I'm going to place these bets here. But for the most part, I think the Titans defense is better. They're the home favorite. I think 2.5 is pretty safe for the Titans.
Yeah, it looks like it's another week without Anthony Richardson. The latest is he's probably out at least one more week, and it'll probably be Joe Flacco.
Well, then if that's the case, I would take an over. I would take an over because Flacco's gonna air it out.
Flacco can chuck it. He can play.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. I think I said this last week, but you can see the receivers on the Colts know that the ball could be coming to them. It looks like they're playing with a little bit more sense of urgency. Those receivers are, and with Richardson, I feel like they're kind of thinking, timing's off. He's a scrambler. Sometimes when he takes his eyes off the downfield and he puts his eyes down and wants to start running a little bit. But with these receivers with Flacco, I mean, those guys are running their routes, and Flacco, he's a timing passer. He hits his back foot and he lets it rip, and it's interesting, man. Flacco looks like he should be a starter somewhere, So if Flacco's playing, I think this over is a good bet as well.
You're going to get that one brain fart, bad decision, bad throw, interception from Flacco
Right.
every game
Yeah.
pretty much, but he's also going to make a lot of plays for you, especially if you give him protection. And we
Right.
saw that last week from Indy. Like I say, they didn't lose because of Joe Flacco last week to the winless Jaguars. They lost because that defense is just not it's not great when they're healthy, but they are really in trouble now with all the injuries.
Yeah.
Just not a very good defense right now. All right, the rest of the games, the next set of games are late games at late afternoon. Chargers and Broncos. Chargers 2.5-point road favorites, 35.5 the total in this game. I love the spot here for the Chargers, Phil. I do. Off a bye week, extra time to prepare, chance for Justin Herbert maybe to heal that ankle, maybe have a little bit more range of mobility here. Coming out of the bye week when they lost to Kansas City 17-10. Denver off a blowout win against Las Vegas 34-18 last week. 3 wins in a row for this Broncos team, both straight up and against the spread to improve to 3-2 after that dreadful start. No, Bo Nix is getting better. There's no question. You're starting to see improvement. 19 of 27, 2 touchdowns, 206 through the air. Throw in a little McLaughlin and Javonte Williams running the football. Cortland Sutton and Lil Jordan Humphrey and company in the receiving game. Defense that's actually played solid the last couple weeks. I think it's a good spot to sell high though on Denver. And I know this game's in Denver. It's never an easy place to play, but I like this situation for the Chargers. They're coming off a bye. They're, Jim Harbaugh is a coach we trust. We like how his ability to get his team ready to go, especially with that extra time. I think at less than a field goal, I like the Chargers in this spot. And their defense has been really good, the Chargers. Let's not forget that. The reason why they hung in there so long with such an inept offense against Kansas City, that defense kept Mahomes bottled up for like 3.5 quarters until Kansas City finally got that go-ahead game-winning touchdown. Chargers have a defense this year, and I think Denver's offense, even though Nix has made strides, it's going to be challenged here by this Chargers stop unit. So less than a field goal, I like the Chargers. Lean under 35.5. The one thing about the Chargers, the offense is still sketchy with Herbert trying to get back to 100%. The defense is solid, and they run the football. Tick, 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 tick. The clock keeps moving. So limited possessions. It's a low total, but it's low for a reason. What do you think here, Phil? Chargers, Broncos.
I agree. Both these defenses are great. Harbaugh wants to run the clock. He wants to run the ball and then grind it out. I think, the one thing that's interesting, the Broncos play a lot of man and they blitz a lot too. So if they can neutralize the run game versus the Chargers and then, get them into passing situations and, the Broncos secondary is great in man coverage and the Chargers don't, quite frankly, they just don't have receivers that can separate. So I think an under is a very safe bet here. I do agree. I think 2.5, I would take the Chargers here as well. It's just going to be interesting to see, how many opportunities both these offenses get with given the fact that they both kind of want to run the ball. And, I think I saw some sort of a stat that was, the Chargers rank last in the league in plays ran. They really want to just grind the clock out. So I think an under here is very safe. Chargers minus 2.5. I think that's a very safe bet as well.
I know in college football, when I handicap it, I use a stat called plays per minute. It's actually an even more accurate representation of pace and tempo in college football, plays per minute. Mm-hmm. And I think if there was a stat like that in the NFL, LA Chargers would be at the bottom as far as plays per minute. For sure. They are methodical. That is for sure. And even your Packers are. I noticed that last week. Like they'll lead that play clock down. A lot of their run game and short to intermediate passes, and Green Bay's another team that's they're in no rush.
Yeah, I'm seeing Chargers. The Chargers rank dead last in seconds per play. So
there you go.
I think there you go. That's your stat right there.
Yeah, seconds per play. Plays per game is a good stat. Yeah, plays per minute, seconds per play. Even those are even better representations, more accurate of pace and tempo for sure. All right, Pittsburgh, Las Vegas. Pittsburgh 3-point road favorites, 36.5 the total. As long as this doesn't get above 3, I'm leaning Steelers here on the road. Bounce back after a really tough loss to Dallas, that game that was delayed by lightning on Sunday night. It was a step back for the Steelers offense, though, in Justin Fields after making some strides and really starting to play better. And that defense, I'll be honest, against Indy, they struggled. And even against Dallas last week, like Dallas was moving the ball that whole game against them. So I'm a little concerned. Like if TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith don't pressure, that secondary, I'm starting to get worried about it. They're giving up some plays through the air again, the Steelers. But can Las Vegas exploit them? That's the question. Gardner Minshew gets benched. Aiden O'Connell takes over. There's a quarterback issue. I don't know if either of them can play at this point, quite honestly, for Las Vegas. Against a Pittsburgh team that's not going to be in a good mood, losing now 2 in a row. And look, Tomlin on the road laying less than a field goal or a field goal or less has been pretty good. We saw them. They were in this price range against Atlanta in week 1 on the road. They won that game. So I'm leaning Steelers here. I just think there's too many issues with Las Vegas. The quarterback issue position's an issue. Devontae Adams is frustrated. He's on the trade block, it sounds like. Things are kind of falling apart here a little bit for Antonio Pierce. No quarterback that he can count on. Adams is angry and frustrated, may want out of Las Vegas. The defense is supposed to be good, but they got shredded by Denver last week. And that's with Max Crosby back from injury. And they still gave up, 34 points to Denver last week. So, yeah, at -3 or better, it's Pittsburgh for me in this one. What do you think here, Phil?
Yeah, I agree with you here as well. It will be interesting to see how Aiden O'Connell plays. Sometimes, you put a new quarterback in, you get a little spark or whatever. But like you said, just too many issues with the Raiders. I think they're just, there's distractions, Devontae Adams, defense not playing well, not playing like how they should be. Pittsburgh -3 all day. And are you leaning over or under for the total here?
I'm leaning under, but my gosh,
me
36
too.
and a half, we're not getting a bargain there.
Exactly. And I mean, I would monitor this. If this goes up at all, I would definitely go under. But I'm both these offenses are sputtering. George Pickens is frustrated again,
All these diva receivers, man. No wonder you quarterbacks get so upset.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, Pittsburgh -3 and an under here for me.
Give me the ball. Give me the ball.
That's give me the ball. I'm open.
Why didn't you see me there? Yeah. All right, Atlanta and Carolina. We got Atlanta 6-point road favorites in Kakalaki, 47 the total here in this game. A lot of money coming in on Atlanta. This is another team the betting markets are crashing on, Carolina. I mean, they are the worst team in the NFL right now. There's no doubt about that. But there's an element of trepidation I have laying a full 6 on the road with Atlanta too. Let's not forget, this team got a 1-point win at Philly, losses to Pittsburgh and Kansas City, 2-point win to the Saints at home, and a 6-point win in overtime against Tampa. Winning by margin is not usually Atlanta's MO. And this is one of those crazy games where I just got that weird feeling about this one. I know at home they got ripped by the Chargers. They lost by 10 to the Bengals. I thought in the Bengals game, though, with Andy Dalton at quarterback, they moved the ball there. I've got a funny feeling Carolina, actually, if this hits 7, I'm not betting it now. I think if you got Atlanta early when it was -3.5, -4 in this game, you got a good number. Nothing wrong with that. But if this gets to 7, and it might by Sunday, I'm going to be interested in the Panthers. It's an ugly home underdog. Just because I don't trust Raheem Morris, Kirk Cousins, or this Atlanta team, period. And even their defense hasn't been great. They're giving up points on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
I'm leaning red rifle here in the Panthers. And if it hits 7, I'm gonna take it. Lean over as well. I agree with the total going. How do you bet Carolina under the total right now?
Yeah, right.
Bill, what do you think?
No, I agree. I think this is going to be a high-scoring game. I did see the Panthers are missing 2 offensive line starters, but the Falcons' pass rush has been non-existent this year.
Yep.
So I think that this is going to be a higher-scoring game. Panthers, man, they're trying to hang on. I think the red rifle, he's going to probably be slinging it around. Like you said, I'm not sold on the Falcons yet either. I think the defense just gets shredded. I could see the Panthers. I'm definitely taking over here. But yeah, like you said, if this hits 7, I would definitely lean Panthers here at home. +6 or 7, +7. I'll
there you go. 7. Yeah, if it hits 7, I'm interested.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, Atlanta 2 straight games have gone over the total, and 3 straight have gone over for the Carolina Panthers, and they're 4-1 to the over overall this season. Carolina, and that defense is just rancid. It is just so awful right now. That's the concern with taking Carolina, but still, I think their offense can have success here against Atlanta.
Interesting stat: Falcons all 3. Their 3 wins have come with a total of winning by 9 points. So I mean, lean this over, and also I think the Panthers +7 is I would do that as well. So
yeah, and that's the thing, right? This is not a team that we consistently can count on to win by margin.
no.
Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what the concern is for me. Remember last year, too, 9-7 they lost in Carolina. What a thriller that was back in December last year. And Carolina actually beat them. And I think I took Carolina in that game, actually. So, yeah, I understand. People are just they want no part of Carolina right now after the last couple weeks. But I think if this gets any higher, I'm interested. I'm a buyer on the Panthers, especially if it hits 7. And I do like the over. All right, Detroit, Dallas. Detroit 3-point road favorites, 52. The total, it's cheap to me. Detroit off a bye week. The better of these two teams. I know playoff revenge, right? Because Dallas lost to Detroit in the playoffs last year. But that's not a sole factor for me, at least, to bet on a team. This is clearly a better team, in my opinion. Detroit, better defense as well. Albeit Dallas on defense against the Giants and the Steelers did show some level of improvement on defense, but I still don't think they're a great defense by any stretch, and this is going to be a step up for them. Now you got to face Jared Goff. You got to face the dynamic duo of Montgomery and Gibbs in the backfield, Amon-Ra St. Brown and company at receiver. There's going to be a big Jameson Williams, who's really emerging now as well for them at receiver. This is going to be a much different challenge for, I think, a Dallas defense that, to me, even after the last 2 weeks, still has some questions. So I like Detroit here, -3. I think it's cheap. What do you think here, Phil? Detroit, Dallas.
I agree. You also got to think Jared Goff indoors. I mean, he lights it up indoors. I think that's another thing, and then also a big mismatch to me is that Lions offensive line versus this Dallas defensive line. I think they're going to dominate the line of scrimmage. And anytime you do that,
maybe you can say the other way around too. Detroit defensive line versus Dallas offensive line. It's the weakest Dallas offensive line they've had in years.
Right, exactly. So, Micah Parsons sidelined, DeMarcus Lawrence sidelined as well. So, I mean, these guys aren't playing. I think, this could be a high rushing game, especially for the Lions. And then anytime you run the ball, you can throw it. And Jared Goff is really good off of play action. I think, -3 Lions, that is cheap. And I think an over here as well.
Yeah, I'm not. I lean over too. I don't love it at the current.
I don't love it either. Yeah,
but I agree though. I wouldn't be betting under in this game. All right, we got the primetime games left. Sunday Night Football. We've got the Cincinnati Bengals taking on the New York Giants. Cincinnati -3.5 on the road. The Giants, obviously a big win for them in Seattle last week. A heartbreaking loss for Cincinnati against Baltimore. They should have won that game and somehow found a way to lose. They got the Lamar fumble in overtime, and then they missed the field goal from McPherson because of, I think it was a bad hold too, if I'm not mistaken, on that field goal attempt. And then the next thing you know, there's Derrick Henry, 40-plus yard run in your eye hole to put you in field goal range to win that game in overtime for Baltimore. So brutal loss for the Bengals. They will try to bounce back here in this game against the New York Giants. And I think when you look at this point spread, this is, again, do we want to lay points on the road more than a field goal with a bad defense? I don't. This is a terrible Bengals defense right now. Lou Anarumo, the defensive coordinator, must be pulling his hair out. What has happened to this defense? It's been terrible this season. I can't lay 3.5 on the road with a bad defense. I lean Giants, but I don't like the Giants as much as I did last week because it feels like when they're on the road and they're getting more points, that's when they're at their best. Sometimes when they're at home and they're getting less points, that's when they screw up, and that's when they disappoint their home fans like they did against Dallas, obviously, Thursday night last week. But I would still lean Giants. I just cannot back a team with the defense that the Bengals has laying more than a field goal on the road. So lean Giants, lean over 48 as well. And look, Daniel Jones in that offense showed me something last week against Seattle. With no Singletary, no Malik Neighbors. What if both of those guys come back this week? Makes that Giants offense even better. But Wan'Dale Robinson stepped up. You got Tyrone Tracy, the running back, had a huge day without Singletary. The offensive line had a solid game. There may be no Kayvon Thibodeau, though, in this game, one of their key pass rushers. So keep an eye on that injury. But lean Giants, lean over for me, Sunday Night Football. Phil, what do you think here, Bengals, Giants?
I agree here on this one as well. I think both these, the Bengals defense on the road, I'm not sold on that. I think this could be a high-scoring game. Daniel Jones actually has been playing a lot better than expected this year, especially if he gets his weapons back. Watch out. plus 3.5. You know, I like that. I'm not entirely sure if they're going to win the game, but plus 3.5, I like that in an over for sure. Especially, you know, if he gets those weapons back, absolutely.
No doubt. All right, Monday Night Football, the Buffalo Bills and the New York Jets. Bills 2.5-point road favorites, 41 the total in this game. Of course, Robert Saleh shown the door, fired earlier this week by the New York Jets. Look, I'm not surprised. I mean, he's been an awful head coach here. So, every week it's penalties, it's not being prepared, it's all kinds of issues that they have had, and it speaks directly on coaching as the big part of it. The defense did all they could against Minnesota. I thought they played a solid game in London last week, but the offense continues to have issues. The O-line is struggling. They can't run the football consistently. Aaron Rodgers is always under pressure. They haven't had many of their big receivers step up either. Lazard's dropping passes. Garrett Wilson's being blanketed, so it's not always easy for him to get open and find freedom down the field. It's just a whole boatload of issues. Now, there's this whole controversy stemming from the firing that Robert Saleh was apparently going to either fire Nathaniel Hackett, Aaron Rodgers' little buddy, as his offensive coordinator, or at least demote him. And Aaron Rodgers picked up the phone and said, "Oh, no, you don't." And apparently maybe stepped in and said to Woody Johnson, the owner of the Jets, "Hey, he's about to can my OC, can this guy, Robert Saleh." There's no doubt Aaron Rodgers is running this team and organization. You're fucking delusional and diluted if you think otherwise. He's the one calling the shots. And I think he had some kind of hand in Saleh getting axed this week because he knew Saleh was about to pull the cord on his buddy, his best friend, Nate Hackett, and take the play calling duties away from him. That's how I see it. I don't know that, Phil. This is just conjecture on my part, but I honestly think that's how it could have went down, in my opinion, because Aaron Rodgers is like the GM of this team now. He's calling the shots. You want to know why he's running the team? Robert Saleh let this guy, Aaron Rodgers, go on this, pilgrimage or whatever it was in the offseason when it was supposed to be camp and OTAs and all that. And he didn't have a problem with it. He just let Aaron Rodgers is running the ship here. Let's be real. That's exactly what's happening here for the New York Jets right now. Now, of course, they have the new interim head coach who's the defensive coordinator for the Jets taking over. How does it affect them? Now, here's what I say about all sports, Phil, with the coaching change. Usually in the first game, you get a bump, and we'll see if Jeff Ulbrich, who's going to take over the defensive coordinator's interim head coach, they get that one-game bump. But I think there's too many issues. You got an angry Buffalo team coming in. This is just a stay away for me. I just want to sit back, and I want to watch it, see how it unfolds, see how the Jets look because I'm not convinced the coaching change fixes it. Coaching change is going to fix the offense. Coaching change is going to fix the play calling because it's still Hackett. Last I checked, they're not making a move there yet. So I'm not convinced the Jets get that first game coaching bump from a coaching change that you see so often in many, many sports. So, but I also don't want to bet against that in the first game with the new head coach. So this is a clear pass for me. I would honestly lean under 41. Jets offense is not working. The Bills offense, look, that was the worst game Josh Allen can play last week against Houston. 9 for 30? Throwing the ball, missing maybe Khalil Shakir, his top receiver again for this game. We'll have to see if he comes back. So I would lean under. I think for me, from a side perspective, is just sit back and see how it unfolds. But it's a very, very fascinating watch for sure. Monday Night Football. Phil, what do you think here? Bills, Jets.
Under, absolutely. Absolutely no doubt. The last 10 times these teams have played, 8 of the 10 have gone under 41, and the average has been 35.8 points a game. So that's one thing right there. And then in the last 3 weeks, both these offenses have ranked 30th and 31st in success rate. So what I'm seeing too, just as I watch both these teams play, is they don't have any success on first down. Second down is just as bad. And then all of a sudden it's Rodgers and Allen in 3rd and long. And these two defenses are too good. They don't give up big plays. Absolutely an under in this game, no doubt. To be completely honest here, I don't know about this bump here or anything like that from the coaching change either, but Bills minus 2.5, I could see them pulling this out by a field goal.
All right, lean Bills here for Philip Nelson on Monday Night Football. I kind of lean that way too, but like I said, I honestly don't trust that the Jets are going to get this huge boost from the coaching change. I think there's more issues. I think the internal issues, even with Saleh gone now, I think they still exist. I think there's
Yeah.
definitely some
Oh,
internal
absolutely.
conflict and locker room issues right now with this team.
Absolutely.
And like I said, I think Aaron Rodgers is pseudo GM and coach right now because he's running the ship and he's pulling the strings, and whatever he says goes. I think right now
Yeah.
that's kind of what I think is
Yeah.
going on right now with the New York Jets. But fascinating stuff, great stuff from Philip Nelson. Another great show. NFL Week 6 preview. Hit the like button for those of you, of course, here watching on YouTube. We will wrap it up now with best bets to wrap up the show. Phil, we'll start with you. What do you like for NFL Week 6 best bet?
This is an easy one. It's what I just said. I really like the Bills -2.5, and I like this under big time. Rodgers just isn't the same quarterback. There's a lot of turmoil. There's a lot of distractions. Things happening there. That stat I just said, 8 of 10 games, all going under 41 with an average of 35.8 points a game. These defenses don't give up big plays. I have to also apologize to all of you out there. My bet last week on the Jets clearly did not work out, but that's why I'm flipping the script here. This team is not in good shape. Coaching fires are always tough mid-season. I'm definitely taking this under, and I'm taking Bills -2.5.
All right, there you go. Which one do you want to make best bet, Bills or under?
Oh man, under for sure.
There you go. Under it is for Philip Nelson. There we go. Under 41 is the best number out there right now. So Bills Jets under 41, Monday Night Football for Philip Nelson with his best bet. My best bet here for NFL Week 6. This was a tough week to choose best bets because there's really a lot I like here going into this game or this week, I should say. But I'm going to go with my Washington Commanders +6.5 against Baltimore. I believe in them. And I know there's a step up playing Lamar and the Ravens. But I think Washington's got the ability to get the job done. And sometimes when teams are mispriced, it takes a while for the betting markets to adjust. That could be the case with this much improved Commanders team. And again, a defense in Baltimore that has shown more than enough susceptibility for Jaden Daniels and the Washington offense to take advantage of it. So I think we have a competitive game there in Charm City there, which is where Philip Nelson is right now. Washington +6.5 against Baltimore for my best bet here for NFL Week 6. That's a wrap. Philip, anything you want to say before we wrap it up?
No, man, great show again. You know what I will say? That's another great one. That was on my list as well. I agree with you on that. The Commanders are going to be competitive in this game. +6.5, absolutely. I can see that. So great pick. Hopefully we're 2-0 this week.
Let's go for that 2-0 sweep. And like I said, the best bets, unfortunately, last week disappointing, but the rest of the card was excellent for the most part. Yeah. It was a great week for me, and we'll hopefully have a great Week 6 as well in the NFL. Philip Nelson hitting it out of the park again with a great job with the analysis, and we hope you enjoyed it. For Philip Nelson, I'm Ian Cameron. This has been the NFL Week 6 edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy. Enjoy the games and good luck. Enjoy NFL Week 6, and we will see you again next week for another edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy.